if we ever get to it. That's a little joke. Well, let's just jump right into it. So I've been really enjoying these topics as we've been getting into them. Preparing for this class was convicting, and I hope, hopefully teaching and thinking about it again will be convicting again. And hopefully there's tonight, last week too with speech, but tonight especially, there's a lot of positive action that can be encouraged, that is encouraged in these Proverbs. And I would challenge us all to leave this class writing down or committing to some I will statement. Based on these Proverbs, I will do this week. I would encourage that. These Proverbs aren't meant to be an intellectual study. Wisdom isn't about intellect. We made this point over and over again. It's not about IQ. Wisdom isn't about like a doctorate. Wisdom is about practical day-to-day changes. And so if we read the Proverbs, I'm like, wow, that was really interesting. I hope someone does that somewhere. It's like, that's not the point. So especially tonight, I just want to challenge all of us to do that. And maybe if you're courageous enough, share it with somebody and kind of keep each other accountable. Say, hey, I want to do this. I will do this. Will you help me make sure that I do this? Remind me. Ask me on Sunday. And I just want to make sure that we don't over-intellectualize these studies and we are looking for God's word to change us. That's my desire with this, especially tonight. Because money is so challenging and tricky and pernicious and deceitful. All these things can kind of just wrap us up. And Proverbs is going to shoot straight tonight. So let's come into this study tonight with that mindset. All right, start off quick. How do you get 4 volunteers to read? Just someone start reading it when the first one comes up. Go ahead.
Riches do not profit in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death.
And Dave, you don't have to do all the reading. You can get the comments are more important. People can read it as they're at home if they want to. I appreciate you, though. All right, the next one, Proverbs 11:28. Okay, volunteer to read this one.
He who trusts in his riches will fall, but the righteous will flourish like the green.
Awesome, thank you. Somebody else? Go ahead, Ricky.
A good name is to be more desired than great wealth. Favor is better than silver and gold. The rich and the poor have a common bond. The Lord is the maker of them all.
Awesome. One more. Go ahead, Greg.
Better is the poor who walks in his integrity than he who is crooked though to be rich.
Thank you all. All right, so like the speech ones last week, I tried to start with kind of just these Proverbs that ease us into the subject. So when you think about Proverbs, what's kind of the idea of these 4? What's the first idea we need to get into our minds about riches and wealth and money? That might be kind of one of the main thoughts that rises to the top with these 4 Proverbs. What'd you say, Anil? Yeah, kind of the risk of the love of money, right? That's 1 Timothy 6. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, right? That's a good. What else? Anything else that this makes you think of? Or comes to your mind as we look at these? What are you thinking, Ricky?
I was reading this morning where the rich man came up to Christ and said, Master, what must I do to inherit the kingdom?
Yeah.
And Jesus looked at him and said, sell everything you got, follow me.
Yeah.
And he,
went away grieving.
Got too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that riches can get you in problems
For sure.
for some people. I mean, it's good.
Yes.
When done right.
Yeah, it's a blessing from God, right? It's a grace of God to have wealth and to find those things. That's good. Terry, and then Nancy.
I was going to say the main thing is that wealth does not equal success. Wealth does not equal happiness. Wealth does not equal your salvation. It does not equal your integrity. It does not equal anything.
Yeah.
And when you put that as the number one goal, that's when you're going to fall short.
That's really well put. I'm glad we had a microphone in here tonight. That was very well said, because wealth is just wealth. That's all it is, right? It's just a currency. It's just a thing, and it doesn't make a point about anything else. That's really well said. Nancy?
Just that it's better to be poor and righteous than rich and crooked.
Yeah, right. That one's so helpful. And that one to me is like the defining ethic of Proverbs about wealth. It's better to be poor in your integrity than if the only way you know how to be rich is to be crooked. Give it up. It's not worth it. And for some people, that's it. Like, that's the only way we know. And so Proverbs, again, like I said, Proverbs shoots straight at us, right? It just like puts us in its crosshairs and says, hey, make sure you get this. A good name is to be desired more than great wealth. Favor is better than silver and gold. All these ideas, he who trusts in his riches, you will fall eventually. All these ideas are the same. And Terry summarized them all really well. Let's move on to the next slide. Two volunteers for this one. Can you volunteer for this first one? Go ahead, Anil.
Do not weary yourself to gain wealth. Cease from your consideration of it. When you set your eyes on it, it is gone. For wealth certainly makes itself wings, like an eagle that flies toward the heavens.
Thank you. That one makes me laugh. Another volunteer. Just one more. Go ahead, Ricky. Go ahead.
How much better is it to get wisdom than gold, and to get understanding than to be chosen above silver?
Yes. Yeah, so these are just more of the same. I just want to, there's a couple more I want to round out this point with, but I like this first one a lot, right? The picture is helpful. Cease from your consideration of it. Don't weary yourself to gain wealth. When you set your eyes on it, what happens? It's gone. It sprouted wings and it flew away. It's just like, I feel like the person who wrote this proverb knew this was funny, a funny picture, right? It's so ridiculous, but this is the idea of it, flies away like an eagle, you can't reach it. The entering idea that Proverbs has with wealth, as far as I see it, is this idea that wealth is good, it's a nice thing, but if it is something you weary yourself, if it's something you're pursuing with everything, it will evade you, or it will ruin you. And if you're, there's so many ways people pursue wealth that is unseemly that will definitely destroy you in your pursuit of it if it becomes your all. And all these things are the entrance warnings I think Proverbs gives about money and wealth. And then it'll get more specific about kind of our relationship with specific attitudes about it as we go on. Anything about these kind of beginning points about wealth in Proverbs? All right, let's continue on. Can I get a volunteer? This is one volunteer to read this whole slide for us. Proverbs 27, 23 through 27. Go ahead, Les.
Know well the condition of your flocks. Pay attention to your herds. For riches are not forever, nor does a crown endure to all generations. When the grass disappears, the new growth is seen, and the herbs of the mountains are gathered in. The lambs will be for your clothing, and the goats will bring the price of a field. And there will be goat's milk enough for your food, for the food of your household, and the sustenance for your mate.
Thank you, Les. So what's this is in a section of Proverbs where there's some kind of longer strings of Proverbs strung together. They're kind of longer discourses again a little bit. What's the point of this little section of Proverbs?
God provides for you.
God provides for you, right? What else? Is there a message for us, even in God's providence?
Work, do work.
Yeah. Which I know, it sounds obvious, right, when you look at these. But sometimes, who was that? I was talking to someone this week, and they were talking about how when they were young, their mom wanted them to clean during the summer, and so they would run the vacuum over the carpet unplugged just so the lines would appear in the carpet, so it looked like they vacuumed, even though they didn't. But when you think about that, it's like, why didn't you just vacuum, if that's the case? And these are things that we do, right? Sometimes we work so hard to not actually work that we think we've tricked the system or found the loophole and gamed it, right? That's kind of the idea I get. You're like, yeah, just work. But yeah, sometimes some of us work so hard not to work that we actually find ourselves in the worst places, where if we just spent that effort knowing the condition of our flocks and paying attention to the herds, it all would have worked out better anyway, right? But somehow we start an idea and then we get sunk costs and we think, well, I have to keep going down this path, and it just all ends up a mess, right? Anything else about this little string of Proverbs? This will get us into another group of Proverbs on the next slide that will be related to this. But anything stick out to you about how this is written? Go ahead, Kathy.
I think it's interesting that it says a crown does not endure to all generations, meaning that your wealth doesn't necessarily, we think we're working for our children's, benefits. But that can all be taken away from us at any time.
Yeah.
So there's no guarantee that you'll carry that
Yeah.
to the next generation.
Yeah. And so whatever the case, whether you're a trust fund kid or or you're the one that made the wealth for your children, the idea is you have to keep working hard because it can go away at any time. There's a message in here about kind of like a version of contentment, or maybe the opposite of contentment in a good way, like the opposite virtue of contentment, where it's never be so satisfied that you stop paying attention and stop putting your hand to the plow and to the work, right? Don't get complacent. This is a really message against complacency, right? Les?
I think verse 24 is pretty important here. For riches are not forever, and nor does a crown endure. And we know from history that even in the dynasty of David, whatever, there were so many problems with his offspring or the offspring continuing the crown and so forth. If you think you're rich and you don't have to work anymore, and something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Something's going to happen.
Well, yeah, and all the problem in David's life came from the day when all the days of the kings would go out to war, right? And David is a king, but where is he? He's at home. He doesn't know you might say he didn't know the condition of his flocks. He didn't pay attention to his herds, right? And so this wisdom, although it is primarily about wealth, to your point, like it's about the well-being of our household and everything too. I mean, I don't know if that's too much of a stretch in this application, but you start bringing up this crown that doesn't endure to all generations. If you're not careful, right, you lose these things that were even promised to you. I think that's really a powerful example. Good. Let's move on, because this next slide is connected. Okay, volunteer with 13:11. Anybody? Go ahead, Ricky.
Wealth obtained by fraud dwindles, but the one who gathers by labor increases.
Awesome. Proverbs 14:23.
In all labor there is profit, but mere talk leads only to power.
Awesome. 21:5. Go ahead, Greg.
The plans of the diligent lead surely to advantage, but everyone who is hasty comes surely to poverty.
Awesome. And one more.
There is precious treasure in oil in the dwelling of the wise, but foolishness swallows it up.
All right, so you can see how this is related to this idea of know your flocks and your herds, keep an eye on them. There's some pretty simple ideas in here, right? The second one especially. In all labor, there's profit. That's a pretty bold statement. In all labor, there's profit. The point is, get to work, right? But what's the opposite, contrasting thought? Mere talk leads to poverty, right? Haley and I have been talking, I want to get healthy and fit again, and so we've been talking, and there's a marathon in October I want to run. I've been talking a lot about it, all right? And in 7 months, you all see whether or not it's mere talk or labor, right? I know, that's what I'm saying. So when October comes around, and you're like, Ben, why don't you run that marathon? And you'll see that, mere talk, I led to physical health poverty is what that will lead to. But there's something about this, right? There's like a psychological thing sometimes when we have these goals and we'll say, hey, I'm going to do this. And we tell somebody, and in the process of telling them, something clicks in our brain where we almost feel like we already did it. Like this is a psychological fun. I actually read like some psychological papers, not a lot, but like I remember reading a journal article about this where if you want your goals to succeed, some people say don't tell anybody your goals because you'll never feel the success of it until you actually succeed. So maybe I shouldn't have told you guys about the marathon plan. But that's part of it, right? Because sometimes we feel like now y'all know how virtuous I am because I told you I want to run a marathon, right? And I get like kind of self-satisfied because of that feeling. And that's what this talk, mere talk leads only to poverty, right? This is a powerful and convicting thought. What else? Any of these other proverbs strike you or hit you? The overall thought is what? How would you condense or distill all these into one idea? What kind of idea rises to the top as you look at these? Actions, right? It's like James 1, right, where it talks about do not be hearers of the word, but be doers of the word. It's a similar principle involved in this, right? Anything else? Go ahead, Pat. Diligence prevents losses. Yeah, I like that. That's kind of Proverbs 21:5, right? I like the double usage of the word surely in here. The plans of the diligent lead surely to advantage, but everyone who is hasty comes surely to poverty, right? Be consistent, kind of one step at a time. There's so much, like the diligent leads to advantage. Good. Anything else about these 4 Proverbs?
Where it talks about basically you need to plan.
Yeah.
You don't just be like a dog and eat the whole bowl at once because you're never going to get fed again. You need to make sure that you are leaving some for future dates.
Yeah, it's like the parable of the foolish virgins with the lamps, right, and the oil and all that. Yeah. Yeah, they didn't count the cost, all that. Good. Yeah, and then the first one's pretty straightforward, right? If you obtain wealth by fraud, it'll always dwindle, but the one who gathers by labor increases it. Now, some of us have seen this not to be the case, right? I mean, there's times and we look around where people obtain wealth by fraud and they keep on increasing, it seems like. But this is a general principle that it'll come back to bite you. It'll end up decreasing instead of increasing. Go ahead, Les.
There's a principle that I've heard talk show hosts talk about, or on TV or whatever it was, where, if you write down your goals, you're more likely to attain them than just keep saying them,
Yeah.
Read them every day kind of thing. I have a brother-in-law who put things on his mirror in the morning, and he would read them while he's shaving and brushing his teeth and everything, and,
Yeah. There's something to that, right? Just like it's like when God tells the people of Israel to write these things on your wrists, on your hands, on your doorposts. Like, if it's always in front of you, you almost feel foolish if you don't do it. You almost feel foolish to forget it, right? Good. So this first idea, and this is like one of the most primary, maybe secondary only to the idea that wealth isn't everything, and make sure that it's not your main concern. But after that, one of the main ideas of Proverbs about wealth is work for it. Like, don't ever think that you can game the system and not have to work for a living. And be diligent and consistent and wise and plan and all that. And that's as simple as a concept as that is, many people try to avoid that at all costs. So I think it's that's one of the basic components, right? Les?
I listen to the radio when I go to work, and it seems like there's always this idea that people are saying that the millennials are going to get rich because the boomers are dying and going to leave $76 trillion to heirs and so forth who never earned it, never worked for it, and all that kind of stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But that's what the world out there is telling these young people. Hey, I don't have to work because it's all going to come to me.
That sounds kind of nice to me. I'm a millennial, so I mean, I'll take it. No, your point's well made, though. It's like with this expectation comes a lot of complacency and laziness, right? We'll talk about that next week. But laziness is also another big idea in the Proverbs. Good. Let's move on. I want to keep moving because there's a lot in here. Someone will read all these Proverbs for us, 19, 4 through 9.
Wealth has many friends, but a poor man is separated from his friend. A false witness will not go unpunished, and he who tells lies will not escape. Many will seek the favor of a generous man, and every man is a friend to him who gives gifts. All the brothers of a poor man hate him. How much more do his friends abandon him? He pursues them with words, but they are gone. He who gets wisdom loves his own soul. He who keeps understanding will find good. A false witness will not go unpunished, and he who tells lies will perish.
Thank you. All right, so I've gotten into a dangerous game with some of these proverb collections because this is just a random section of Proverbs from Proverbs 19. And in it, I think there is some that are collected together. You can see here, wealth has many friends, but a poor man is separated from his friend. And then this proverb in the middle, but then it goes back to the idea, right? Many will seek the favor of a generous man. Wealth adds many friends. And every man is a friend to him who gives gifts. Wealth adds many friends. But then all the brothers of a poor man hate him. So you can see there's kind of some continuity with this section of verses. But then in the middle of all that is these other ideas, right? These ideas, as painful as they might be, are very, the truth of them is pretty evident, I would say, right? Where people love to be around wealthy people, just enjoy being in their homes, enjoy sitting in their cars or seeing them. And then the poor people, it's kind of like, I don't know, it kind of makes me sad, so I don't want to be around them. Whatever it is, there's all these, it's like, this is just so true in life. But then why might this idea be in here? He who gets wisdom loves his own soul, and he who keeps understanding will find good. Or I should have not got these alternatives. But then we talked about these proverbs last week, actually. The false witness will not go unpunished. And so there's a precarious kind of supposition, I'm supposing a little bit in this. Do these ideas apply to the other ideas in here, do you think? Do you think the ideas about lying and about wisdom apply to this concept of this observation? Because the observation at the center of this is if you have money, people will like you. If you don't have money, people might not like you. Go ahead, Terry.
I think it's true that it goes together because the people who like you because you're wealthy and who don't like you because you're poor are not true friends.
Yeah.
So they're lying about being a friend to you.
Yeah.
And so that's where it comes in, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's like just the falseness of what they're doing will fall upon their head, right? And then I think the idea about wisdom is maybe for the rich or the poor in this situation, right? Acquire this wisdom because if you get this wisdom, you'll love your own soul. Because what happens, some people acquire money because of the appearance of it, because they want people to view them a certain way. This was certainly true in the Jewish culture in the first century, where they equated wealth with God's blessings. And then if they thought, if I'm wealthy, God loves me. And then everyone sees, well, hey, this guy's wealthy, God must love him or her, and it's like all this nonsense follows from that. But if you can get this idea, then you don't need the approval of others. You just love your own soul, right? You keep understanding, you'll find good even when everyone abandons you because you're poor. You understand, well, that's their problem, not mine, right? So this kind of wisdom, it's not just an observation, but this is where Proverbs, I think, really is so sharply, sharp, I guess. It's just sharp. It's wisdom. It's just so incisive and true. That's like, make this observation and then get the wisdom that comes from it, because those people are liars, and that's not going to benefit them. And whether you're rich or poor, the response other people have to it ought not and doesn't have to change how you feel about yourself or how you view yourself or whatever. Like that's a dangerous game to get into. Once wealth starts to impact my image of myself, you start to lose yourself real quick, right? Rick, and then Les.
I was thinking about what Les said earlier about listening to talk radio and whatnot, the millenniums about it. So you go through life and you have gained wealth, and you've had a lot of friends, and then if no matter whether you're rich or poor, if you didn't have the wisdom to understand the ones that are trying to get into your pocketbook or whatever, doesn't matter, and whether it's millenniums or whatever, the X's and the G's and the whatever category you fall under. If you haven't worked and you continue to, try to milk the system you're not a wise individual. And that wisdom, if you've worked and you've done everything that you should have done, and your friends they love you, those that are really wise. Yeah, and true. Right. And true. Yeah. That's going to continue. Yeah. And that's the whole thing about God's wisdom, whether it's got anything to do with money or spiritual things or whatever. You stick with God's plan, and everything will fall into place. Yeah. Yeah. And to your point, like, how many people do we see around, or maybe it's been us, so like we try to use wealth to get those things, to get friends or to get status or to feel better about myself. If I just had this much money, I think I'd be comfortable, right? There's been studies done, like people that get happier with the amount of money increases to a certain point. And they get to that point and you get almost less happy as it goes above that. And it's interesting, right? But we think if I just had more money, that's the wisdom of that, I'd just be so much more comfortable. But yeah, there's so much dangerous thinking that goes along with that. Les, go ahead.
The two sentences there, he who tells lies will not escape, and he who tells lies will perish. I guess I've always told my children that you should always tell the truth, because that's all. You have a lot less you have to remember. Yes. Yeah. If you're telling lies, who did I say this one? But if you tell the truth, it's the same wherever you go. Yeah. No, that's amen. Yeah, this idea of how our speech plays into all this is really valuable. I think being honest with ourselves too. Why am I friends with this person? Am I being partial? Am I only around this person because of their wealth? The honesty isn't just in what we say, but it's in kind of a collected honesty as a person, right? Where I just want to be friends with this person because I care about them and they care about me. Whatever, if they're poor or rich, doesn't matter to me, And sometimes we don't even, we don't challenge those ideas within ourselves. We don't think about that. Introspect. But yeah, you're right. I think to the point about this lying, like telling the truth makes your life, the wisdom of it is pretty helpful, straightforward. The less lies you tell, the easier everything is. All right. Okay, someone read Proverbs 13, 7 through 8 for us. Go ahead, Les. There is one who pretends pretends to be poor, but he has great wealth. The ransom of a man's life is his wealth. The poor hears no rebuke.
So these two proverbs are both about wealth. They seem kind of different to me. I don't know how much they hang together. They didn't really fall into any other categories. But I want to put them up here because I think there's some interesting, these are just kind of observations, right? Anything strike you about these two sets of Proverbs, verses 7 and 8? Is there wisdom in the first one? The one who pretends to be rich but has nothing, is there wisdom? Is either of these wise? Is the second one wise? What might the second one be saying? Well, pretending to be poor but has great wealth. A liar. So that's how I read it when I first read it. But then I wonder, maybe it's making a point that there's someone who lives like they're rich even when they're poor. But then there's people who live like they're poor even when they're rich, right? Warren Buffett famously drives the same Toyota, like Jeep Cherokee he got in the 90s or something. And I'm not saying he's pretending to be poor, because of course not. But there's people who live like they're poor still, even when they're rich, and that's part of how they got to being rich. I don't know if that's what this is saying. That's like me supposing. But any other thoughts about that? I saw some of their hands. Cass?
I once read a book called The Millionaire Next Door,
Mm-hmm.
and its point, I mean, this was a long time ago, like in the aughts or whatever,
Yeah.
2001 or something. But the point of the book was that throughout the U.S., there are actually several hundred millionaires, and most of them, like a huge percentage of them, probably 85% of them, if I'm remembering correctly, don't look it. Like they bought their car and paid for it, they bought their Ford Fusion in 2015 and drive it all the way until 2040.
Yeah, the wheels fall off.
Right, until the wheels fall off. And they just don't let anyone know how that they're millionaires and they can quit their jobs anytime.
Yeah.
And the point of the book was that those people got that way usually by working really hard and investing well in the stock market.
Yeah.
And they continue to live frugally.
Within their means, yeah.
Yeah, and then just most of them donated all their money to charity, and people were like, what happened?
Yeah.
Why were they so rich?
Yeah.
And that was the point of the book, was that these people have lives that don't reflect their wealth standing.
Yeah, I think there's a valuable lesson in that particular, possibly, and I don't know if that's what this proverb is speaking to. Just to be frank.